Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We will start. Sorry, we are a little late in starting it due to some logistic issues. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. BHPK Tilakveera, Director, Department of Foreign Exchange, Central Bank. And at the same time, we have Mr. Sudat Prasanna, Additional Director, Mrs. Thilani Kapuruge, Senior Assistant Director, and Mrs. Madhu Jayaratna, Senior Assistant Director of Central Bank Foreign Exchange Department. So without taking time, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome all of you for this very special session. And we welcome all of our resource persons, and we acknowledge the presence of our President, Mr. Deepal Nelson, at this very special occasion. So without taking time, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite Mr. Sudat Prasanna, Additional Director, to start the presentation. Let me first welcome to speak Dr. BHPK Tilakavira to address you all.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All of you know economy is reviving. Economy is in a revival path, and liquidity in the domestic forex market is also improving. In line with that, forex transactions are also improving. And the National Chamber of Commerce, in this environment, National Chamber of Commerce has organized this seminar on this timely topic, Foreign Exchange Act and new challenges. The seminar would cover all aspects of Foreign Exchange Act, liberalizing foreign exchange operations, capital and current transactions, new regulations, and the offense and the penalties, and the operations of forex dealers. Actually, I take this opportunity to thank National Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event because this is a very timely topic. And today I am with my Additional Director Foreign Exchange Department, Mr. Sudat Prasanna, and Head of Division Capital Accounts, Mrs. Tilini Kapuruge, and Division Head, Policy Division, Mrs. Madhu Jayaratna. And without taking much time, I'll hand over the floor to our resource persons. Thank you.
President, National Chamber of Commerce, and all ladies and gentlemen. In fact, now, of course, we are going to talk about the Foreign Exchange Act and the Foreign Exchange Regulations today. In fact, I think some of you may be familiar with this Foreign Exchange Act and whatever the regulations issued they are under. But while some of them may not familiar, so therefore, for the interest of everyone, so I will just start from the beginning, and we will just focus on the particular preamble of the Act. In fact, this Act was introduced in 2017, Act number 12 of 2017. And when this was introduced, then existing Act of Exchange Control Act was repealed. So this Act introduced by repealing then existing Act of Exchange Control Act. The Exchange Control Act was introduced in somewhere in 1953. It's very early stages of the independence of Sri Lanka. And then it of course prevailed over nearly 7 decades when it was abolished or repealed in order to introduce this new act. So new act was introduced with the expectation that we should go ahead with the liberalization of the foreign exchange process. You mean that the relaxation of foreign exchange transaction in order to facilitate more and more foreign exchange transactions in order while integrating with the rest of the world. And at the same time that some of them had some concern that, the early act was a bit complicated and more complex, procedures were complex. And so that they had a kind of a echo to just to simplify and to make sure that, to make more investment friendly environment, the legislators, of course, thought of introducing this act in order to facilitate this new thinking. In fact, this new act targeted to promote foreign exchange transaction while regulating the foreign exchange transaction as well. So you know that basically any country which undergo this liberalization process of current and capital account transactions, basically, has to face the problem of, regulating. If once you liberalize a lot of transaction, you'll have to closely look at the market, whether these transactions are happening in a way that we need, or whether they are just really happening that in order to achieve our desired results, or whether the markets is not functioning as we expected. So therefore, we need to regulate those already liberalized transactions as well. So both these aspects are covered under this new act. So I just wanted to, without taking much of the time, just wanted to give you kind of a very snapshot of basic, the framework of this act. You call it foreign exchange market, you call it domestic foreign exchange market, and like any other market, the market here, you have market players, demand and supply, okay? Like in order to, just to build up a framework as to operate the market more efficiently, so Act suggests this particular framework. So where you can identify the basic concepts, like here I have given here as ADs and RDs. Now, in fact, Act says ADs means authorized dealers, and this RDs means restricted dealers. So in the foreign exchange market, we expect that all these forex transactions to be done or to happen to either of these agents. It's like for any other agent, for any other transactions. For the foreign exchange transaction also, we expect that they are authorized dealers and the restricted dealers. When you say authorized dealers, they are basically banks. They are basically banks, basically commercial banks, okay? And also the specialized banks when permitted, okay? I will further explain it. And these restricted dealers means they are not banks, but there are certain segment of people, okay, who have been just permitted to undertake limited foreign exchange operation, like you may have seen that money changes, okay, for that matter. So we call them as restricted dealers, okay. So we will identify these two people as dealers in foreign exchange. So if you do not do any transaction through these people, that is something not permitted in terms of this act. So any transaction cannot happen without going through this, either through an authorized dealer or a restricted dealer. So what will happen if you do any transaction in foreign currency? I'm just taking foreign currency without going through this bank or a RD. What will be the repercussion? What will be the outcome? That will something similar to violating the foreign exchange. So all the transaction, we expect that has to route through the banks. Okay. So then we can talk about these transactions. Now, you know that the transactions in foreign currency. Have you heard that we are dealing or we are carrying out our transaction within the country in foreign exchange? When you go to a hotel, when you go to somewhere, whether they will ask your payments in dollars? Have you ever come across such an instance? You happen to go to a hotel, you market or somewhere, whether someone has asked to make the payment in dollars? No. It's within the country, all the payment you should do it in rupees. Why? The rupee is the legal tender of the country. Okay, so that is in terms of the Monetary Law Act. Okay, but if you want to carry out, you execute any sort of international transactions, what you need? You need dollars. But do you have dollars? No, you don't have dollars. Then therefore, what you have to do is you have to buy dollars. Okay, for that you have to just walk to where? You have to go to the authorized dealer or to a restricted dealer. So then they are going to do two types of transaction. One is that you are going to do an international transaction. That's a current. There are two types of transaction. One is current transaction and one is capital transaction. I hope that we have a presentation is basically for 2 hours. 12 we have done. Okay. So we have two types of international transaction. Now I told you that transaction happening within the country, you call them not the international transaction, they are local transactions. So local transaction happening in rupees. That is happening within the country. Okay, that means between resident to resident. We call them residents. Okay, we in terms of our act, we just make our conceptual framework using these particular concepts. We use the current transaction and capital transaction, and also we call it what these transactions are happening between resident and non-resident. So if it is something transaction within resident to resident, you call it, it's not an international transaction. Therefore, it is not a capital or a current transaction. But if you always refer to international transaction for the purpose of our act foreign exchange, and either we call them it's a current transaction or a capital transaction, or a capital transaction or non-capital transaction. Okay, we expect that if it is an international transaction, the transactions are twofold. Either it's a current transaction or a capital transaction. So these current transactions and capital transaction can be taken place in two ways. You have to always go through a bank, and you pay for these transactions using your funds in the foreign currency accounts. Now, when you go abroad, your relatives, even you, when you go abroad, you earn foreign exchange and you repatriate these earnings to Sri Lanka. Okay. Sometimes you tend to keep your money, collect your money in a foreign currency account. You may have heard all those good old days that NRFC and all. Okay. Now they are not in that similar names, but still the concept is same. That persons, individual can hold their earnings, but they earn abroad in the foreign currency account without converting into rupees. You got my point? So those monies can be held in foreign currency accounts. These monies you can use for making payments. That's your money. It's not the bank's money, even though banks hold this, but it's your own money. You earn that. But sometimes you may not have dollars. You have been in the country, you have not gone everywhere, but you want to make a payment of your son who is going to study abroad. You need dollars. You have to make the respective university in dollars. Okay, so you don't have dollars, something that's similar, you are buying anything from another person. You have to go to a bank, we call it authorized dealer, and you have to give rupees at the agreed rate of exchange. You have to buy that dollars. So you convert rupees into what? The dollars. So either you use your foreign currency already in your foreign currency account, or you convert rupees into dollars in order to make this particular payment. Okay. Now there, again, just see the other side of the slide. There say permissions. Okay. Permissions. Now, in fact, now this side, I hope that you are clear with this side. Okay. Now, if you look at the other side of the picture, now certain when the powers in this act has to be carried out by the act is there. For the purpose of the act, the central bank is the agent of the government in order to carry out the foreign exchange transactions. Okay, it's the agent of the government. So we are doing a kind of an agency function. The government is the principal, the central bank is the agent. So we are doing a kind of an agency function. So in terms of the provisions of this act, we'll have to grant permissions to general public as well as to these authorized dealers and also restricted dealers to carry out these foreign exchange transactions on behalf of persons in terms of this foreign exchange act. Now, these permissions will be either general permissions or will be special permissions. You understand my point? It has to be either general permission or it's a special permission. When it's a general permission, normally we issue these permission in terms of regulations, orders. So when it is issued in a regulation and orders, we will have to gazette them. These regulation and order need to be gazetted. And then some of these things will go in the form of directions that we will be issuing directly to the banks. We call them as authorized dealers. Okay. So I'm going to just to give you some very basic things in order to just to broaden your understanding about what we are going to discuss, in the following slides. Sure. Okay, now you can see, okay, I told you that when it comes to special permission means what has not been permitted in terms of the regulations or the order or by directions. For that purpose, you have to make a special request to the director foreign exchange or to the central bank. That has to be either through a bank or even you can make a direct request. For that, we have to grant you a special permission. In fact, not we. Finally, these matters will be the ultimate authorities in terms of this act, the minister. In certain cases, not the minister, it has to go to the cabinet. In certain cases, not only to the cabinet, it has to go to the parliament as well. Okay, so we have a kind of a lengthy procedure in getting to particular respect to approvals, but it's very clear. Okay. Now, in fact, when you want to give a special permission, like if you want to kind of make investment overseas, okay, you want to take a kind of a big investment outside, okay, in order to expand your business globally. So you have to take your money outside the country. Then we have we have permitted all these outward investment to a particular limit, what the country can afford to do. But anything in excess of that, what we have to do? We have to give a special approval because it has not been given in terms of the regulation. So then you have to, that particular investor has to write to us. Then we will have to take it up whether we can grant this permission or not. So we have a decision-making procedure. Okay. So that's coming by special approval. So when it comes to, these approvals, we normally grant these permissions to two types of persons. Now, persons either can be a natural person or a legal person. You know that entities, and you call it legal persons. When it comes to individuals, they will be natural persons. And in fact, this when you in one of the another basic, very important concept in our act is that we have a kind of a demarcation between the residents and non-residents. Some of the people we will call them as residents. Now, you and I who live in the country for the purpose of our act are residents. Okay, but someone who is coming to Sri Lanka just for a visit or a kind of a temporary visit or someone will not be a resident. Will not be, he will remain as a non-resident because he's a foreigner. He's coming here for a temporary visit. Okay. So likewise, we have issued a kind of a order in terms of the section 31 of this act, defining the residents who are the residents for this particular act. So anyway, I told you that when any transaction is carried out between resident and non-resident, we call them with what? International transaction. That transaction, either it can be a current transaction or a capital transaction. So it's happening between residents and between a non-resident. Okay, if it is not happening between a resident and a non-resident, it won't be international transaction, it won't be either current or capital. So this residence part, in order, I mean, if you want to identify who are these residents, then other side of the coin will be the persons, not non-residents. I mean, who are resident outside the country. So you will have to always refer to this the particular gazette. We call it order issued under the section 31. Order issued under section 31. Okay, of this foreign exchange, and it says who are the residents. For the interest of you, I will just slightly highlight one or two parties just for your understanding who will be resident. Just tell me, someone a citizen of Sri Lanka, is he a resident or a non-resident? Is a resident. Okay. Someone who is a resident citizen of a foreign country, okay, any citizen of a foreign country married to a Sri Lankan, married to a citizen of Sri Lanka. Yes, we have another condition if. We have another word called if. If such person has been in Sri Lanka for a period of 183 days or more in aggregate during the preceding 12 months. So what we look at is that, yes, citizens, yes, you are married to a Sri Lankan, but you should be here in a particular year for more than 183 days, you know, consecutively, or in total, in aggregate, you should be here. So by the way, someone should be here in a particular given time for more than 6-month period. Then he will be our resident. That's how we define. We are not going by the citizenship, but we have clearly given these things. These are available in our website. Our website is the for Department of Foreign Exchange. If you type, you will see www.dfe.lk. Okay. Again, I'll tell you another category of resident, non-resident. Now, someone who is, just tell me, who has proceeded outside Sri Lanka temporarily for holiday, education, business, medical treatment, or other similar purpose. Okay. For not more than 182 days. Are these people residents or non-residents? They are gone out, physically gone outside the country. They have gone for a leisure, they have gone for a seminar, a training program, sport, event, or whatever, medical treatment, but they have gone abroad for temporary purposes for less than 183 days. Then they are they are not physically in the country, but still our residents. Okay. Someone who has gone abroad on resident visa. Not the resident visa, I'm sorry, student visa. Okay, some go study and go on student visa. So someone who has gone abroad, are these people are residents or non-residents? For our act. Now, when you go to a bank, okay, you will say that, no, this is my letter of enrollment, certificate of enrollment issued by university. My son is going for overseas education. Okay. What the bank will look into, he has been issued the visa by a foreign country, yes. But for the purpose of the Foreign Exchange Act, will he be considered a resident or a non-resident? Even if he goes more than 183 days, that he is a resident. But suppose in the event, it also say that in the event his, visa will be expired by say around having studied for 2 years, visa will be expired. But still we say that who has proceeded outside Sri Lanka on a student visa granted to another country and for a further period, not more than 182 days upon the completion of such. He can even still continue to stay in that country, maybe on a bridging visa or somewhat for more than 6 months. Here again, we until he get a kind of a temporary resident visa or PR visa, we will consider him as what? The residents. Like the government of Sri Lanka, government corporations, government institutions, statutory boards, government agencies, state-owned enterprises, everything we call them, we take them as residents. Okay. Now diplomatic representatives, we have our diplomatic representative in India or some other countries. So we will call them as not as our non-residents, we call them as our residents. So the diplomatic representatives of other countries in Sri Lanka, we will call them for the moment, for the purpose of our act as person resident outside Sri Lanka, non-residents. Okay, so that's, I have given you a kind of a small description, okay, about who will be our residents and non-resident. I'm not going to go into very detail. So are you clear up to this point? Are you all clear? Do you have any doubt or something not clear? Then I can just further clarify. So far clear? Because I'm just telling for the very beginners, like, there may be people who are not very familiar with listening to the first time. But I know that some people are maybe here veteran in these areas, but I'm just telling you some for people who have not that much conversion with these jargons and these things. Okay. Now I want to really just shed little light on our particular sections of that. Okay. Now, in fact, now you can say section we have in this particular act, it's very relatively a small act when compared to Foreign Exchange Control Act. Here we have only 33 provisions, I guess. Yes. 33 sections. Okay. So there we can I can slightly touch upon these sections. What does it really mean? Section 2 says central bank as the agent of the government be responsible for implementing the provisions of this act and in order to ensure proper promotion. That I have already. What we do is we just delegate our powers to the banks in order to execute this foreign exchange transaction on behalf of us. Like what the government has entrusted on us, we will again delegate this to the banks. The section 3, we have the Department of Foreign Exchange. It says that we have a Department of Foreign Exchange under the umbrella of the central bank. There we have a head in the department, we call it the Director of Foreign Exchange. He will be carrying out all the functions, whatever entrusted on him, okay, in terms of this act, okay, under the direction and control of the governor of the central bank. That's what the section 3 says. Okay, right. Now, in section 4, we will say we will appoint the authorized dealers. Like I told you, we will appoint the dealers. There are 2 types of dealers. One is the authorized dealer, one is the restricted dealer. There we can also appoint some other persons as well, and other authorized persons. Sometimes it rarely happen. We can, other than these authorized dealers and restricted dealers, we can appoint another type of person also as authorized person to deal in foreign exchange. When you say deal in foreign exchange, it's very, very important. When you say deal in foreign exchange, the act broadly identifies there are different types of dealing. you can buy foreign exchange. That is one type of dealing. Again, you can sell foreign exchange. That's another type of dealing. Again, people want to lend and borrow also. Again, then you can lend in foreign exchange, you can borrow in foreign exchange. Sometimes people, when you give dollars, you should be able to accept foreign exchange. Or sometimes if you want to exchange one currency to another, you want to exchange the currency. So all these activities we call dealing in foreign exchange. So this dealing in foreign exchange can be carried out by these authorized dealers, or for that matter, the restricted dealer, or that matter, any other authorized person authorized by the minister. Okay. Now, in fact, I told you that the banks, of course, from the day of commencement of their businesses, are deemed to there's a deeming provision that they are considered as authorized dealers. They have been appointed as authorized dealers. But anyway, there can be some other banks who are not commercial banks. For that matter, if you can say, Sanasa Bank is a bank registered under Banking Act, but still you call them a specialized bank. Okay, the National Saving Bank is not a commercial bank, but it's a specialized bank. Then the one in terms of this has to do is we have to appoint them as authorized dealers only to the limited activities. Then only they can carry out these permitted activities, only to the extent of their authorization. They can carry out all types of dealing, all types of activities, but they can carry out only to the activities for which they have been authorized to do so. Okay, so that's the thing. So, but when you go to a commercial bank, by nature, they can carry out any type of foreign exchange transaction, but it's not the case of specialized banks. They should be particularly authorized to carry out selected transactions. Okay, now that's what the whole section 4 is all about. Okay. And I already told you that any foreign exchange transaction need to be routed through this either restricted dealer or either the authorized dealer or any other authorized person. We have not yet appointed any other authorized dealer or any other person as dealers, but we of course carry out for the moment, we maintain our framework with the assistance of the banks and the other restricted dealers. You mean the money changes broadly. Okay. Now we talk about the section 5. It talks about the utilization of foreign exchange. Okay. Now in terms of section 5, it says a utilization of foreign exchange or foreign assets. So we are calling this foreign exchange and foreign asset. We have given definitions for foreign exchange that include foreign currency notes and other bearable instruments. So foreign exchange, foreign currency note, blah, blah. We have given in this our act the definition. And then foreign assets. The foreign assets may be movable or immovable, but outside Sri Lanka. You can just refer to our definition in act. It should be outside Sri Lanka. So these section 5 talks about this utilization of foreign exchange for assets held or owned by a person in or resident in Sri Lanka for current and capital transaction. There we are not going to talk about basically about the foreign currency already held by persons. Okay. I mean, like they may have derived this money from abroad. They may have earned this money from their exports. Okay. They may have received this money from by providing a sort of a service abroad, something, but for the moment, lying or crediting in the account, lying in the account, foreign currency account. So are you permitted to use this account? This act broadly says, yes, you can use this money for your current and capital transaction. Now, in fact, when I say current and capital transaction, these two words, even though you may have heard it, may not be that much familiar. But I just give you some small, kind of a brief description about this current and capital transaction, because in section 6 and 7, those terms basically deals with these two terms. Basically, someone, any particular trade transaction, okay, we call them as foreign trade. We call it as what? Current or capital. We call it international transaction, that's for sure. But it will be a current or capital, but it's a current transaction. Okay, so you know that basically you have an external account of Sri Lanka, you call it balance of payment. Okay, there are balance of payment, you have a trade account, okay, you have income account, something like that. No, you may have heard, and then capital account and the financial account. They are in the trade account, all the transactions, we call them as what? Whatever transaction we just reflect in the current trade account, we call what? The current transaction. So in that sense, any import or export, any payment or receipt in respect of import or export is broadly called as what? The current international transaction. Or any, sometimes not only that, whenever whatever you are having kind of income, maybe your interest payable to a foreigner, kind of a dividend payable to a foreigner. I'm not using that term foreigner, it's a non-resident, or else it's some kind of a rent. Okay, any form of income payable to a non-resident, we will identify it as what? Current international transaction. Similarly, the resident who is receiving any income as an interest or a rent or a dividend in that nature, we call them as what? The current international transaction. The payment relation to current international transaction. So those we will basically capture as the current international transaction. Then what do you call as capital transaction? Now I'll ask you a question. Someone who is going to receive some payment from a non-resident as investment in the shares of your company. So what he is going to acquire? He is going to acquire what? Financial asset in your company. So he will be getting his ownership by investing in shares. So this asset or share, you call it what? The transaction, underlying transaction, we call it as what? The term it as capital transaction. Because he is going to acquire shares. That's a financial asset. In other way, you are going to invest in a company abroad, okay, in the shares. That will be called as what? Your investment outside. That is also what? The capital transaction. Okay. So there are sometimes it may not be necessarily a financial asset. Sometimes he's coming and buying our apartment. It's a kind of asset, but it's a property. It's a real asset. Then for that, he has to remit money into the country. That has to come through the bank. Can he buy this property in Sri Lanka without routing his funds through a bank? No, it is not permitted, because we say that the money has to route through the authorized dealers. If it is not routing through authorized dealers, he will be in trouble. Not only he is violating this stand, but he can't take the money out whenever he sells this property. Okay, and at the same time, someone who is going abroad in order to acquire a property. Maybe someone is advertising, we want to buy property overseas, condominium properties. There are sometimes, very lavish advertisements that they are. And then you just want to send the money for this acquisition of a kind of a real asset. Resident party from an unresident party. Is it a capital transaction or a current transaction? Can someone guess? You are acquiring what? Asset. It's a capital transaction. Someone has migrated from Sri Lanka. Okay. Now he has some savings here. He has some savings here. Now when he is migrating, he wants to take part of his all savings here. okay, that he is going to take this money out. So that's something of his capital. So what he's going to take? Yes, he wants to take this with you. What we call it kind of a migrant transfer. No? The migrant transfer is also in the form of a capital transaction because that represents a capital transfer. Okay, not a current transfer. But if somehow you have pension, whatever you receive for whatever you have done in the past or employment benefit or anything, they are not capital. That's something what you derive by providing a service in the past that you will receive it the present days. That will be a kind of a current transfer. Okay, so basically there are certain transfers are also can be grouped into this current transaction and the capital transaction. I think without taking much of the time, I just can just go to the other slides where 6 and 7, because if I do not elaborate these terms, I am sure that nobody will be able to understand the essence of our regulations and the particular orders. So that is why I just wanted to give you some idea. At the same time, this section 6 says the current transactions. When you say current transactions, in terms of the sex, the very salient feature of this act is that this act has identified that this current transaction have been completely liberalized. So we don't need to liberalize by issuing another regulation because Act itself has identified that all the current transaction, any transaction relating to current nature in nature have been freed, liberalized. So you don't need our permission. The banks, whenever you go to a bank, if your intended transaction is a current transaction, bank has to release dollars. But anyway, if the bank don't have dollars, that's a different matter. That's what we had in the last previous days. We didn't have money liquidity in the system. The bank say, no, I don't have money, something like that. But it's not because of our, they don't have a permission to sell, but only thing that they didn't have money. Okay, that's a liquidity issue. Okay, but anyway, from the regulator's point of view, they have these current transactions are all liberalized, so they can sell or buy this currency without a limit, and they can facilitate all the current transaction. But what matters is the section 7. Section 7 deals with the capital transaction. Now, as a country, now I told you that when we introduce this act, we are in the process of liberalization of what? Capital transactions. Even we liberalized all these current transactions as far as back as 1994. In 1994 only we particularly liberalized all these current transactions, but it was in the form of a direction, but it was not embedded to the Exchange Control Act. But the difference of this act is this act itself has identified that all the current transactions have been liberalized. So you can't reverse it unless one exception only we can reverse it. I will explain it to you later. This capital transaction is that now we are in the process of liberalizing capital transaction. Even this capital transaction liberalization process was started in way back in 1990s, early 1990s, and even under the Exchange Control Act. But we repealed it, but still we have a kind of a deeming provision in a regulation issued here that whatever we liberalize will be continued to prevail. Not only that, we will, in terms of this act, we started to liberalize all the current capital transactions from the 2017 onwards. How we do that? Section 7 says the minister can permit the capital classes, liberalize or permit capital classes by way of issuing regulations in gazettes. So what we do is from time to time, whenever we think that the minister think that we have to further liberalize our capital account transaction, he will issue a regulation under section 29 of this act, and then he will further liberalize these capital transactions. Now, what I want to tell you, now this process will be ended, this liberalization of capital transaction, where this process will be ended. Once we completely liberalize all capital transactions. Okay, now we have permitted all the people in Sri Lanka to go and invest in a kind of individuals. We have permitted to go and invest in some other country, individuals up to a 200,000 maximum US dollars per individual for his lifetime. Okay, so this is a kind of a free liberalization that we have allowed people to make investment outside the country. But when it comes to a company, listed company, they can take up to up to 2 million of US dollars for making investment outside the country. This is a kind of a subsequent liberalization, capital account regulation we have allowed people to enjoy. Okay, so this is where we are in the process of sequential capital account liberalization. Now, where will this will be ended? When we completely remove all the restriction on the capital transaction, then you will call one particular term in order to identify this process. You will say the country is having an open capital account. So do we have an open capital account yet? No. What do we have? We have a partially liberalized capital account. We have a partially liberalized capital account. We don't have open capital account. So once we reach the end of this liberalization process, we will say, okay, Sri Lanka has a capital account, open capital account. So no issues, no regulators. I'll come and say this has to be liberalized, this has to be liberalized. No, because if you have open capital, like we have an open current account now, then we will be having an open capital account. It means your rupee can be converted into dollars for any type of transaction, no matter the nature of it. Regardless of the nature of it, you can convert rupees into dollars or dollars into rupees in order to execute the transaction. That one time, fine day, it will happen. It will happen on the development of your domestic foreign exchange market. If you have enough liquidity, if you have more and more volume of domestic transaction, inflows and outflows are happening quite frequently, your volumes are building up, then you have a lot of liquidity, you have a lot of foreign reserves in order to back at the central bank and also with the banks, then why not? We can facilitate this particular thing, but it will happen in future. But until that moment, we have to go little by little, step by step, in order to reach this ultimate. So that's where we are heading to. So I told you that in terms of the Section 7, we have allowed minister has to allow the capital classes in order to allow people to transact. So that's what the section says, Section 7 says. If something has not been permitted in terms of the Section 7, can anybody engage in this capital transaction? No. What I can say, someone who is going to acquire a property of a body outside the country. Now you say that it's a capital transaction. Have we allowed, the minister has allowed in terms of it, in terms of the regulation issued? No. So you can't convert your rupee into dollars in order to go and acquire this property, even though a lot of advertisements are happening this and there, very colorful, but the banks will not facilitate it because it's not. Why? It hasn't been permitted. Okay, so something like that. So if you want to know any transaction permitted, please be referred to the regulation issued under Section 7. We have Regulation 1 and we have Regulations 2 issued. I will show you that. Regulation 1 is about the residents investing outside Sri Lanka, and Regulation 2 about non-resident investing in Sri Lanka. There we say what kind of areas the foreigner will come and non-resident come and invest in Sri Lanka. What type of instrument, what type of area, what are the applicable limits, what are the applicable exclusion, limitations, everything have been gazetted. And then otherwise, the other side of the picture is that if you want to go expand your business overseas or make investment outside the country, what are the permitted areas? Up to what are the applicable limits for such outflows? All have been particularly given in this regulation. We'll have to always be referred to all these regulation issued under Foreign Exchange Act under the Section 7, because it is relating to capital account transaction. I hope that you have understood this thing. Now, Section 7, 8, 10, 11, 22, 31, there are very important sections. Let me briefly touch upon, I'm not going to elaborate in very detail. Section 8 about the import and export of foreign currency and Sri Lankan currency. Somebody needs Sri Lankan currency to be used abroad for what? Don't need. So you don't need to permit. But still we have permitted to export Sri Lankan currency up to a limit of rupees 20,000. That not to be circulated elsewhere outside the country, but to bring back whenever you come back to the country to be used for your immediate use, usages. And the Section 8 also says that what are the applicable limit in order to export your currency. Now, if you are taking dollars, you have in wallet, you have 50,000 US dollars. You are going to the Sri Lankan port or airport, you say, I have $50,000. Then our law says, you can't import this much of thing without a declaration. You can't say without a declaration to Sri Lanka customs, you can't take this money through our border. It's a border control. Okay. And again, we say, if you are bringing foreign currency into the country, not so foreign exchange, because foreign exchange is a broader definition. If you are bringing foreign exchange or foreign currency notes into the country, if you are bringing in more than this much of currency, you have to make a declaration to the Sri Lankan customs. That's a kind of a border control. All these have been emphasized by way of an order issued under the Section 8 of this Act. I will give you a snapshot of this particular in the following slide. I will show you. For the moment, just keep it as it is. Section 9, all about that, the issuing directions. We have three types of transaction. One, capital. Second, current. The other is a local transaction. Why you issue local transaction in rupees note? Why you issue direction for local transaction? Do we have to issue? No, there are certain transactions are happening in foreign currency between two resident parties under circumstances, special circumstances in dollars. Can you just give me one of the example? If I were sitting there, I wouldn't have known this thing, but I'm just judging you. Some of them, you may be knowing it. It's something foreign exchange transaction happening within the country. So you need to issue regulation for those, directions for those. That is that we will issue under the minister will issue this direction in terms of the 9.3 of the Act. 9.1 current transaction directions, we issue directions to the bank, not to the public. Okay, but still those are accessible. You can go through our website and see. Okay, if is there any exporter here? Yes, the exporter is a company registered in Sri Lanka. Is he a resident party or non-resident party? Resident party. Now he is going to bank and ask a loan in rupees, not rupees, dollars. He said borrowing in dollars, borrowing in foreign currency. Is it a current or capital transaction? No, none of them. Why? It's not an international transaction. It will be your bank and you. Both are resident parties, but happening in dollars. So that's the sort of a transaction what we identify under circumstances, either not a current or a capital, but still happening in dollars, for which the minister has to issue direction in terms of the 9.3 of that. Okay, you got my point? So there are things. Okay, sometimes you might say that you have to make a payment to someone who is supplying goods to you. I will come to that point. And you being an exporter, your supplier, local supplier will also claim in your dollar payments in dollars. You being a local supplier to him will pay in dollars to that particular person. Both parties are having business foreign currency account. So transaction happening in BFC has to be permitted. So that's a local transaction, but still happening in dollars under circumstances. But in the normal circumstances, but still they are going through the bank, okay? But I have to emphasize it, all these are going through the bank. But in certain circumstances, you can go to a person and ask, just give me a dollar loan. What the hell you are talking? I'm not an authorized dealer. Okay, so that's what the position. And then section 10, 11, I will further elaborate later. That's our related to investigation. Let me touch upon that later. Section 20, 31, I explained. I will just touch section 22 because it's a very important section. In terms of this Foreign Exchange Act, we have allowed all the current account transactions. And we have allowed the bank to release foreign exchange or receive foreign exchange for all current international transactions. It's a very liberalized, dynamic, free market. But capital transaction, we have allowed certain segment of capital transaction to transact in foreign currency. Some of them we have not permitted. You being an individual cannot borrow from abroad. It's a capital transaction, but not yet permitted. But companies have been permitted. So that we are in a process. One fine day, we will be doing it. That's upon the graduation of your market. Okay, development of your market. Okay, now just 22 says, whatever you have said and done in the past, in an emergency, where you are going through a, typical period. Okay, you have a turbulent time where your market has been almost shrunk, no dollars. Even we can't import our essentials, including petrol and fuel and everything. So how can I travel abroad? Because the market is not able to finance your intended transaction. So we have gone through such phases. We call it a foreign exchange crisis. During the time of this crisis, that will pose a kind of a threat to your financial stability. During that time, the section 22 empowers the minister, rather the cabinet, to issue an order in order to reverse the already liberalized transaction. No matter it's a capital law, no matter it's a current. In an emergency situation, the minister is empowered to take action to reverse the already liberalized transaction, either in current or capital, no issue. Okay, that's what you see, that he has issued order. Then the people will be prevented sending money for outward investment. Okay, then people will be prevented money for making some already permitted transaction even. But but you have to keep in mind that even we were in a very epicenter, in the depth of the crisis, but we have not reversed any of the current international transactions. That's this we know that's I want to tell you very more with a special focus, special emphasis that we didn't restrict any, did we? No, we didn't distinct current international transaction, but of course we only reversed the already liberalized capital transactions, but we didn't touch the current transaction. Broadly, I would say broadly. Okay, certain things were there, but broadly we didn't touch. So, but the only thing that the banks did not have money, that's a problem. Someone who wants to import this thing, he couldn't open a LC. It's not because that we had reversed the transaction. We had not allowed the import, but because maybe those imports have been banned by the Import and Export Control Department, or the banks were not able to finance this LC because they didn't have money. Okay, but keep it in mind. Okay, right. Now we'll move to the other parts of this thing. Now I'm not going to touch upon this regulation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These regulations have been issued by the minister under the section 7 broadly. Some of them are linked to the section 5 as well, section 8 as well. But broadly, just to define that what are the capital transactions that are available or that can be facilitated for people. It could be residents making payment overseas for investment or some related transaction, or could be a non-resident making a capital inflow here, okay, to engage in a capital transaction of a capital nature. So there are two transactions. I already told you the regulation 1, classes of capital transaction undertaken outside Sri Lanka by a person resident in Sri Lanka. Regulation number 2, classes of capital transaction undertaken in Sri Lanka by a person resident outside Sri Lanka. So when you happen to see this person resident in Sri Lanka, person resident outside Sri Lanka, it's simple as that it's a resident or an unresident. So always you will not be panicking. Time should come. You know that this is a transaction happening, between resident and an unresident. So that needs permission of the minister. That has been given in terms of issuing regulation. You call it as regulation 1 and regulation 2. Regulation 3 about the applicable limits and the procedures when remitting the migrant allowances. So if you have some of the relatives who want to remit the money overseas, now whatever he saved here, because he has migrated overseas, he should know about how I should take this money through the banks. Sometimes, people are talking about this informal money transfer method like Hawala, Undial, even though you have not about the capital and current, but you have heard about the Hawala, Undial, and everything. because they are just like, in the market, in the society, okay? They are just doing some informal money transfer thing. But still people may resort to those things and take the money out, we don't know. But we don't want to shrink all these activities as much possible and to develop the banking channel in order to facilitate that. Okay, that's what we are trying to do as regulators, okay? Then these remittances has to take place, have to go through the banks. Then we have some limits applicable. Then they will go to the banks. The bank will say, okay, you can convert this much of your rupees into dollars, and you can take it away. And they say you have to take this money only through this type of account. They will say capital transaction rupee account. You have to open a capital transaction rupee account. That's kind of an account that's just the channel through which you have to remit this money out. So all these have been clearly narrated in this regulation. You call it regulation 3. So regulation 3 is all about the miscellaneous other capital transaction, what have not been covered under regulation 1 to 3. Okay. And then regulation 5 all about the maintenance of accounts for the purpose of engaging. You know that you need to open foreign currency accounts. So sometimes in order to carry out, not sometimes, of course, particularly necessarily in order to carry out a transaction. So we have already allowed people to open, banks to open Nostro account, banks to open Vostro accounts. We have allowed that even they need our permission. Even the government needs our permission in order to enter into foreign exchange transaction. Okay. And then you can say that the persons, individuals, they want to keep their dollars, whatever their hard earnings in dollars, in personal foreign currency account. Then personal foreign currency account can be opened because that the minister had issued a regulation allowing people to open such accounts with the banks. So whoever who is a kind of an individual is entitled or eligible to open such PFC account, personal foreign currency account. But those accounts cannot be opened by entities or companies. So therefore, they have to open an account called business foreign currency account. Someone who's providing a service to a non-resident and earn not only service, maybe selling goods and services, he's getting dollars, he can open business foreign currency account. Someone who is receiving has to remit money to Sri Lanka to invest in Sri Lankan companies or in some other areas, then that foreigner has to open an inward investment account with the bank. That's the channel through which he has to bring this flow into the country for the investment purpose. Someone is going outside the country in order to make investment, has to take his money through account called outward investment account in foreign currency. There he convert his rupees into dollars and put into the OIE account, through which only they have to take the money out. So then we know how much of money taken out, how much the money brought in, and we know the net effect of the investment flows, like similar to trade. Okay, but you see the current deficit in the current account, so you can say the net inflows. So something like that. All these accounts have been permitted in terms of the regulation and subsequent directions issued under the Foreign Exchange Act. So I'm not going to talk about the subtopics of all these regulations. Please always refer to our website. There we have published all these regulations. Whenever you want to get this piece of information, just access to these regulations. It's a matter of going through, very simple, straightforward, clearly explained. If you don't have kind of a not clear, even you can feel free to talk to us or write to us or drop a mail, then you will be able to get a clarification. No, I'm as expected by the chambers. Now here I'm going to talk about little about within another 15 to 10 minutes. I'm going to talk about some of the recent changes we have done. I hope that you are clear with what I already explained. Anyone has any doubt? Please raise your hands and ask. That you don't get such always you don't get this opportunity. No, okay, no issue. So I have done my job so far, I guess. Okay, and then I think whatever the recently what we did was that the repatriation export proceed. Now you may have heard that the country was going through a very bad patch, where we didn't have enough resources, foreign resources. Even our resources were entire. We were seeing the bottom of it, of the bowl. So we didn't have much resource, and even the bank didn't have dollars. So therefore, we wanted to just ask the exporters to repatriate all their foreign exchange earning into the country. But I would say that in the 1953, whenever we issued the Exchange Control Act, introduced the act, under that there was a provision that requires all the exporters of the country to repatriate their export earning. But this was removed in 1994 with the acceptance of the Article 8 status of the IMF agreement, whereby we had to liberalize all the then existing current international transaction, and with the removal of this particular requirement of repatriation requirement of export proceed from 1993 to 2016, there had been no requirement. Please keep it in mind, over a large amount of years, over a period of years, that their requirement of repatriation of export proceed to the country was not there. But this requirement was reintroduced in the 2016 by way of issuing a gazette in 2016 as a budget proposal. And then it was again introduced under the 2016 in the newly introduced Foreign Exchange Act. In the 2016, what was there in the exchange control? And then after nearly 93, 2002, after 23 years, this was again introduced in 2016, and again, because the Exchange Control Act was repealed and introduced the Foreign Exchange Act, again this requirement was introduced in 2017. But that this thing was there, repatriation requirement was there. But I don't know how effective it was, because the requirement anyway, the regulatory requirement was there. But anyway, the country again suddenly went into a kind of a crisis, foreign exchange crisis. There we understood that this need to be emphasized. This has to be more stringent. That is why we introduced a rule under the Monetary Law Act in order to require all the exporters to repatriate their. This is then again not under the Foreign Exchange Act, under the Monetary Law Act. It's a crisis measure. Because the foreign exchange reserves had been all depleted, then we'll have to recall all the foreign exporters to repatriate their foreign exchange into the country. That's a sudden requirement. And then we introduce a rule under the Foreign Exchange Act requiring all. Then it is not something under the Foreign Exchange Act. It's under the Foreign Exchange Act was held responsible to monitor whether this is happening, whether the exporters are repatriated in this thing. So we started to carry out strict monitoring campaign in order to make sure that the rule is effective. That, of course, that's what this all slides is about. You can see that I have given the sequence as to how this evolved from 1994 to 2021. So the existing rule says, existing rules also number of times revised. I have here given the particular instances where we introduce different rules under the Monetary Law Act, under section 68, this rule was introduced. And time to time, the requirement of this rule was changed. Okay. But in terms of this present rule, it says what? It says what? That is important. There we have exporters here. What you have to do is you have to make sure what? We'll discuss. Okay. Now says rule number 1 issued under the 2020-11. It has evolved to this extent after, revising some of the earlier rules issued. Therefore, in terms of the existing rule, it says that the exporters of goods have to repatriate their export earnings within 180 days. Is it reasonable or not? Okay, it's up to you. And some exporters say that, they need some more time. But still, in general, we find that, normally exports they received within 3 months to 182 days. But still, we have given 180 days a reasonable time period to enable all the exporters to win their export proceed the country. Does it mean that they can hold this foreign exchange outside the country up until 180 days? Yes. They have to bring the export proceeds within 180 days. Okay. Otherwise, they can immediately remit this money. Okay, they can hold and remit. That's no issue. But then they have to, from the shipment date, within 180 days of the shipment date, they have to receive this foreign exchange into the country. Then when they receive this money, what they have to do? They have to meet authorized payments. Authorized payment is what? So this is a rule issued by the governor in the form of a gazette. Now this under the Monetary Law Act. Is it under Foreign Exchange Act? No. What is the role of the Foreign Exchange Department? In order to monitor. The monitor. So what we recently introduced an automated system, IT-based system, in order to monitor this export proceed repatriation requirement with the assistance of the stakeholders like Sri Lankan Customs and the bank. Now it is happening. There are some practical issues. We are just in the process of resolving them. And the future is such that, we are going forward in the direction, we are just resolving these issues encountered. And in order to make sure that in future, we are going to have a very refined and very sophisticated system in order to carry out our monitoring effectively to make sure that the exporters, all exporters in the country repatriate their earnings into the country, Mr. Bandula. You just understand, no? Okay. Now, in fact, this authorized payment means whenever you receive $1,000, you do not need to convert this $1,000 on the day itself. But before converting it, you can hold it up until the 7th day of the following month. You receive this money, say today. Today is 27th of June, and then you can keep this money up to 7th day of next month. But when you retain this money up to 7th day of the July, within this period, you can utilize this main payment for what? You can make payment for your LCs already open. Okay, for your imports, you can make this use this for your servicing foreign currency loans, what you borrowed locally and internationally. And also you can make payment to the salaries, dividends to the non-residents, not to the Sri Lankans. Sri Lankans, you don't need to pay in rupees, you have to pay in rupees. And you can also invest in the Sri Lankan development bonds. And also you can make some payment to the local suppliers, they who supply some materials to you for your exports. If those payments should be, again, something the local suppliers supply to you for your export related transactions. Okay, if it is not for their supplies is not for exports, you cannot make them in dollars. That's the thing. They has to be export related. Okay, you are making the payment for local suppliers against something they supply to you for your export consignment shipments. Okay, and then meaning that this again we have another development in this rule where we introduce another rule just, giving an exemption for the service exporters. This repatriation and conversion requirement was equally applicable to both exporters of goods as well as services. But this applicability of conversion requirement was waived for the exporters of services with effect from what? 12th of August 2022. Okay. Then thereafter, they were removed, and this requirement of both repatriation and conversion requirement was applicable only to goods and services. But the goods services people have to repatriate. This repatriate requirement will be there for both goods and services, exporters. But conversion requirement is applicable from the last August onwards only for the exporters of goods. You are clear, no? Clear? Good, right. So when we say that's a residual conversion, meaning that you have to not only, you have to convert these exporters of goods who have received their money using their old payments in foreign currency, whatever the residual, what is left in the account need to be converted by 7 days of the following month. But still at their request, most of the requests, because they have some pending payment beyond this date, we have further accommodated these people, giving an extra calendar month for their some pending payments, especially for imports and debt servicing and all. So some of the payment due dates may fall with the following months towards the end of the following month. So we have allowed them to keep extra month, 30 days, calendar days, to keep this money without converting. That's where they have to provide all information to the bank to ascertain that this is genuine and this is a kind of an actual transaction. He should make the payment dollars. They have to has a pending dollar payment for his loan, and also they have to import a kind of a maturing payment, LC payment, and import of goods end of the month. So then you can keep this money without converting. So that's a kind of you have to have a kind of a dialogue with the bank and say that, you can't convert because I have this pending payment. So if you can provide the evidence, the bank will not convert it and keep it for another extra month, but not beyond that. Just 1 month, it's extra 1 month, but not beyond that. If the transaction has not been materialized, then the bank has to immediately convert that to rupees. Why we say so? Why we ask them to convert these rupees into dollars? Sometimes the exporters may not like to do it in the atmosphere where you see some volatility in foreign exchange rate. Okay, exchange rate, you may not, rather you may dislike, may not like it, but still it's doing it in the interest of the liquidity of the market. The bank should have this money in dollars in order to supply for those who are not foreign exchange earners. It's not that, there are some people who are doing international transactions, those who do not earn foreign exchange. Those have to be facilitated out of the earnings of the foreign exchange earners. Okay, so therefore, that is why we put that conversion requirement. But going forward, the market improves, balance of payment stabilizes. I don't know whether we will continue to live with this kind of a requirement, but for the moment, yes. But in future, it all depends on our progress. Okay, now I, of course, really just taken this through you, but let me, I'm just taking very, I have to give you some reasonable time to ask the questions. So, so in the interest of time, I just want to briefly touch upon this slide as well. I told you that I'm going to further talk about this export and import of and possession of acceptance of foreign currency in terms of the order issued under Section 8. You know that the Section 8 to deal with the export and import of foreign currency and Sri Lankan currency. So there the minister has issued an order in the Gazette just highlighting the amount or the limits, applicable limits and other conditions for import and export of and possession of foreign currency. What do you mean by possession? Now you have rupees at your hand. Do you require my permission to hold these rupees? No, within the country, any amount of transaction in any value you can carry out in rupees, because rupee is the legal tender. But if you hold a foreign currency at your hand, that's the concern. Why? So you are having 50,000 US dollars at your hand. I'm asking why you hold these dollars? You will say, okay, the dollar will be, going down, like, depreciating. So in future, I'll be getting more value by selling it. So that is not the intention. That is exactly what we want to stop. Because we want the people, we don't want people to use this dollar as a kind of a speculative motive. We want as much possible in the foreign exchange in the banks, and you just walk to the bank whenever you want and just provide the information and document everything and just satisfy the bank, and then he will make the payment because we have facilitated. For that, you don't need to be a banker, just accumulating dollars at your hand. So we have permitted for the moment people to hold US dollars 10,000 at their hand at any given point of time. For what? To sell future? No, that is for your future travel maybe. So then how you have earned this 10,000 US dollars? You just went to the Chatham Street or somewhere, there are Hawala people, Undial people, and just managed to get the money? Not that. You are not permitted. That's a kind of illegal foreign exchange operation because that is not taking through the bank. In an event that we spotted something like that, then you will be in trouble. So you always have to, you can keep 10,000, but how did you earn this 10,000? It may be in this way, like you have earlier gone abroad and you just managed to use just, maybe only 1,000, but you had taken 5,000 and you have unutilized amount 4,000. Then gradually, if you are a frequent traveler, you will tend to collect some of money at your hand. So up to 10,000, you can keep this money at your hand without depositing to your foreign currency account, personal foreign currency account, or without selling it to a money changer or a bank. So that's for your future travel. You can keep it at your hand, but not anything excess of $10,000. Okay. So you can remember that last year we issued a kind of amnesty where the minister allowed the people who had excess money in their hands to come and deposit to the bank within a particular month or so. Millions of money were deposited into a bank, meaning that people had held this money at their hand, no some reason, no other. Okay. And at the same time, there is export and import limits also foreign currency. In terms of the same order, someone who is coming into Sri Lanka, bringing foreign exchange, including foreign currency notes, that includes foreign currency note, draft, TPs, foreign travel cards, everything. Okay. Now, if someone is bringing this foreign exchange into the country for more than US dollar 15,000, no, it's equivalent to any other foreign currency. I mean, US dollar 15,000, no, it's equivalent to any other US GBP, Japanese yen, no, whatever, euro, whatever. So then you have to declare to Sri Lankan custom. But if you are bringing in 14,000 US dollars, you don't need to declare to Sri Lankan custom. That's what the law says. That's a border control. Okay, that's a rule. Just, everywhere in all countries, they just, just have those limits. And, but if it is less than 50,000, you don't need to. But when you departure, if you have something in excess of US dollars 10,000 in the form of currency notes, what you have to do? You have to make a declaration to Sri Lankan custom. Why? That's the requirement of this order. In case if you carry, 12,000 US dollars without declaration, in the event the custom check can say that you are taking 12,000, you are not declared, you will be in trouble. Because that is against the law. Okay. But if you can take 9,999 US dollars without declaration, there's no issue. If it is over 10,000, yes, you have to declare. Okay. You got my point. Now you say, how can I take the money? The banks will issue me only the 5,000 US dollars. When you have the banks can only issue 5,000 currency notes. No, but still you may have some unused money at your hand. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, I don't know because I sometimes people just have different. Yes. No. There's no. But how you have earned that is unused amount, or may you may have earlier withdrawn from your personal foreign currency account, Okay, maybe you may have gone abroad and provided some services. You've been a consultant or whoever has provided service, and you brought this money into the country, not on an employment contract even. If it is an employment contract, you have gone abroad and worked abroad and brought the money here, you have to deposit this money to your PFC account within 90 days. You can't keep this money at your hand. Okay, but if you go over for a temporary thing and you just receive your money for some of your services or so, then you can keep it at only 10,000 without depositing or selling. But if in excess of 10,000, you have to deposit or sell. But up to 10,000, you can keep it in your hand. It's legal, no issue. Okay, but if you someone who is coming into the country, begin foreign exchange less than 15,000, but still he intends to go back within a very short span of period, and where he intend to take back US dollar over 10,000 US dollars, then no matter he's bringing less than 15,000, he has to declare. Meaning that if you are bringing $14,000, but you are again intend to take back more than 10,000 out of 14,000 so brought into the country, you have to declare, because you need to provide the evidence at the port or at the Sri Lankan custom that you brought money from outside the country. Otherwise, you will be in trouble because those money have not been chopped on your passport. Okay. Why such regulation? Do you need these things? Yes. For any different purposes, maybe for the Financial Transaction Reporting Act, maybe Financial Intelligence Unit, Act of the Money Laundering, and also it's a part of the Border Control Act required by the Financial Action Task Force also. And that is everywhere you can see such limits. Even in the exchange control, that the exchange control then control has enabled the Sri Lankan customs in order to take such action as if it has happened under the custom ordinance. There was an enabling provision in the Exchange Control Act itself to immediately take action for illegal importation and exporters of foreign currency. Some people like smugglers, traffickers, and they quite often do those things. But we do not have such enabling provisions in the Foreign Exchange Act for the moment, but we are suggesting in the upcoming amendments to include such a provision to enable the Sri Lankan custom to take very effective action against such illegal importers and exporters of currency. Okay. Okay. So let me just move forward. Yeah, again, yes, I explained most part of it, and I don't think that this is something that I need to little bit elaborate, because we thought that, you know, here we are going to meet some of the people who have interest, business interest mainly, so that we wanted to touch upon some of, Mr. Bandula, we wanted to touch upon some of the recent things that we introduced. And so that purposes we added these few sites to you. This is of course accommodation to business foreign currency account holders. This has been, of course, what does it say that? Yes, I have few more slides. Like, you know, this is something that business foreign currency account holders, they can, of course, utilize, make payments in respect of current transactions, accommodation to business foreign currency account. Service loan, the expected foreign exchange cash flow recovery shall be. Yes, this is. Yes. Now this is the lender, authorized dealer. I told you the bank, no, the bank is the lender. Now he's lending to who is the borrower? Foreign exchange earners. Okay, who are having business foreign currency accounts. So now we have allowed them to grant foreign currency loan. We broadly call accommodations. But only thing that but they can use that, they can make payment. This is Tilini, can you just explain this thing? Oh, Madhu.
As you already said, this is for and the other transaction, and there are foreign exchange and authorized dealer. And the owners who have to serve with foreign currency. The main purpose introducing this as a, you can apply foreign currency one yes, from the announcing. Yes. Utilize the current transaction.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's
So that's a kind of a short-term, not a short-term, it's accommodation to business foreign currency holders. Why we have given this facility? Because they are having foreign exchange earnings. So they are in a position to service this loan in foreign currency, so that we have permitted the banks to extend these things. But in the event, we have seen that some of the people they have just had to see this kind of a, they don't have future cash flows in foreign currency because of their disruption in their business, because of the foreign crisis, foreign currency crisis and all. So that had big impact on their businesses and all. So therefore, in such event, we have allowed the banks to recover this in rupees only as what? A last resort. So that is why we added. Not that you can convert rupees into dollars in order to service this loan. If you raise loan in foreign currency, you have to service in foreign currency. But in the event, if you don't have future cash flows because of something had happened to your businesses, then what you have to do is, you have no other option left. Otherwise, asking the permission to convert in rupees into dollars and pay. Okay, but whether the bank will accept it? No, in the normal circumstances, no, but only as a last resort. Okay, if the bank satisfied that this loan has been impaired, or it means there has been no payment for last 2 to 3 months, it has gone to non-performing category and all. So therefore, it's a last resort. Of course, they can consider, we will recover it in rupees. So they will convert this loan value into rupees and they will recover in rupees. That's something that you should, yes. No, they can't, you can't get a waiver. You are Mr. Samila, no, we can't get a waiver because this rule was introduced under what? The Monetary Law Act. The Act says that no matter you have a short-term loan or long-term loan, if you have a continuous inflows of foreign currency out of your exports, that you can continue to service, no. So therefore, you can't retain for your future loan repayment. That in terms of the rule, you have to mandatorily convert your all earnings within the following day. You can keep it extra month. If the loan payment due is after 2 months or sometime in 2 months in intervals, you can keep it for extra month. But in the normal circumstances, you can't do that. Because, yes.
Can a local company borrow from their foreign subsidiary?
Yes, of course. Now, for instance, now local company here, something he is going to borrow from a local party outside the country. Okay, we have, it's kind of a borrowing overseas. We have laid down a procedure in regulation number 2. You have to read the regulation number. The local companies here has been permitted to take the loans from abroad subject to those conditions, meaning that the tenor of the loan has to be more than 3 years, and then they have to bring this loan proceed to a external commercial borrowing account. You have to open external and you have to bring this money through the loan proceed to account. Then you can only condition that the tenor of it has to be more than 3 years. Okay. Yeah, then you can continue to service that account. You don't need to have a foreign exchange earning to service this thing because it has been granted in the form of a general permission. You got my point? Okay. So because this rule was introduced under the Monetary Law Act, we can't give any waivers on it because it's not a foreign exchange act, no. So that will be equally applicable for any company, no matter it's a BOI or non-BOI, no issue because it was under Monetary Law Act. So we are there to monitor only. Okay. I don't know in future development, these regulations may be changed, but we have to deal with this thing for the moment. But if you want to take a short-term loan, even you can for the moment, even the companies, exporters, even can, if they have a business foreign currency account, even they can take loans less than 3 years in foreign currency for the moment. And they have to service their loan in foreign currency only. They can't convert rupees into dollars. But if you are taking the loan through ECB in terms of a general permission, the tenor being more than 3 years, then even you can convert rupees into dollars to repay it. Yeah, but if it's less than dollars, that will be met only out of your dollar earnings, only dollar earnings. Okay. Okay. Now, this is something that SFC, short-term foreign currency loan from a company incorporated outside Sri Lanka. That of course, the lender is a parent company of companies within the group. Someone is a company here whose parent company in overseas, so they can borrow from that particular company for short-term loans, maybe to facilitate your working capital requirement. Because we had a condition that, when you go to a bank, the bank denied or refused to honor your import payment because they had told you that, we don't have dollars. Sorry. So in the event they didn't have a way to finance this thing. They have to make sure that they keep on continuing their businesses, no? So we had to think of some other way in order to facilitate these people, so that we allowed some of the companies here who they have parents, isn't that? Parent companies outside the country to borrow from these parent companies for short-term requirements, like maybe trade financing, yeah. That is for the working capital requirement. But the only thing that's only given only for the companies here whose parents overseas, to finance importing raw materials for manufacture of products within a domestic, but the condition is that they should have had a kind of a 30% local value addition. But if you don't have a 30% value addition, then you can't. Then how you do get the assess that whether your production has a kind of weight of 30% value addition? That has to be assessed by who? The export Ministry of Industry, and then based on that he could have borrowed abroad, and he can just use this. He could have converted in rupees into dollars in order to service this loan. That was a kind of a measure that we introduced in the middle of the crisis, because that the people otherwise didn't have a way of financing their businesses. Okay, but this facility will be given only for 1 year. That's the thing. But this facility will be given for 1 year. This will be ended because this was introduced in terms of regulation. No, the regulation will be ceased by 1 year, means 31st of this year. December. So that was a kind of a temporary facility to given to roll over their businesses, to finance their business, sustain their businesses. We don't want to allow the people to buy short-term loan. Can you just guess why we should not encourage short-term loans? So I told you that, borrowing abroad is a capital transaction or a current transaction. Borrowing abroad in foreign currency is a capital transaction or current transaction? It's a capital transaction. Okay. Now, why we should not encourage people to raise loans in short term? Can somebody guess and say? We just expect that is to happen at the very end of the capital account liberalization process. Because when they come and ask the bank to convert, they only bring you on the rupees, no. The banks will have what they have to do. They have to convert these rupees into dollars in order to service this loan. The bank has to give, they have a lot of other things to do, imports. Okay, so many things they have to supply their dollars. If the people can ask to convert in dollars, so for short-term loan, the bank will be in trouble because there will be enormous demand for dollars. The demand is mounting up, but your supply is not matching with that. So there will be extra pressure on your dollar, that the dollar rate will be depreciated. So that we can't facilitate short-term loans at the moment. That we can facilitate, provided that you have sufficient foreign liquidity in the banking system and at the central bank. If the reserve position, if the banks are not sufficient, the rate will going down. The central bank can inject the money into the system, provided we have a lot of reserves. Whenever we don't have the resource, how can we accommodate those these things? So that is why this is a temporary measure. Short-term things will, of course, not a good for a country like, countries just getting rid of this, coming out of this crisis. Okay, it's not a sustainable measure. But for a long-term period, you have a kind of a breathing space. Just can breathe. You have some 3-4 years to pay. So the country can build up resources and gradually pay. Loan payment is a current transaction. It's not a capital transaction. So that is why bank can deny it even. Capital transaction are liberalized. So that's the risk. You got my point? Okay, good. So, but anyway, we have facilitated for businesses for their survival and for this from the point of their sustainability. It's not all about the foreign currency. No, you have to look about the lives of the people, businesses, so much so happening. No, so that we had to take such measures. Okay, in the middle of the crisis. So that's one thing that I wanted to highlight. That again, let me just briefly touch upon this. It did not change that slide, no? Okay. So this is what I explained. Sorry that I did not just put the slide. And then order. I told you, in terms of the section 22, the minister can issue an order in order to reverse the prohibit or suspend the already liberalized transaction. The first order of this nature was released in 2020 April. That was the starting point of this crisis. One was happened in 2019 that hardly hit on our foreign inflows in the what you call Easter attack period, and then 2020, and again we met the issue of pandemic, and then what had to happen is that we had to just to stop the outflows, basically. Then we issued this order, no matter that we already permitted, we just issued this order, like the minister issued this order with the approval of the cabinet, just to suspend some of the already permitted capital transactions. So I told you that we had permitted Sri Lankan companies to allow to remit 2 million, listed companies 2 million to make investment outside the country, and unlisted companies 500,000 per year for investment outside the country, individuals 200,000 for lifetime, something like that. Okay, and even migrants also were able to get $200,000 US to convert rupees into dollars and take with them at the time of their migration. All this had been happened before issuance of this order. In the 2017, we issued 5 regulations. Number 3 was relating to migrant allowance. There we allowed the people to convert $200,000 rupees into dollars and take it away as migrant allowance. So we must facilitate people. But by the time suddenly the crisis erupted, so that we didn't have the space, so we had to immediately stop these all outflows. There we issued this temporary measure in the form of an order. That by exercising the powers vested in the minister and the cabinet to prohibit some of these transactions in the interest of preserving the financial stability of the country. So this order was subsequently, consecutively extended, or sometimes it was issued as a new form of order for consecutive 3 years. Even now, this 30th June, this existing order will be expired, but we are going to issue another order. But having been, deprived, people have deprived because of these long-term prohibitions and all. The people are really desperate that they need to take some money out for investment. Some people like startup companies. Some people, they are looking for overseas investment, not like everyone, not like us. So they have been badly affected, but can't help. No, we couldn't help them because of this shortage of foreign exchange in the foreign exchange market, liquidity issue. Okay, but now we are going to just to give them a kind of a space to relax, little bit relax all this suspension giving some amount of permission to take their money out. So that will be in the form of a new issue. Upon the lapse of this existing issue, there will be a new one is coming. Thereby, we are going to give some new relaxations, some certain relaxation you will be able to come to know. But I just can't give this, tell you this limit, because the minister will issue on the 30th June. Now it is with the minister will issue. Thereby, we are going to give some limits, increase the limits, existing limit to take the money out for investment and also for the migrants and also for other transactions, whatever not permitted since 2020 April. Okay, so that people will be able to enjoy this thing. Okay, right. So okay, this is let me briefly touch upon this this particular special foreign currency account investee. This was also issued in the midst of the crisis, where some people, some companies, whenever they issue shares, they are supposed to receive their payment through the account called inward investment account to the credit of the company's rupee account. But the companies who were desperately looking for dollars for their import requirement were really demanding us to keep this investment in dollars in a dollar account in order to finance their imports. Because if when they get these dollars and convert it into rupees, what would have happened? That again they have to go and ask the bank to convert these rupees into dollars for their finances. Bank would have said, in the meantime, I don't have dollars, because whatever they converted would have sold to some other person. They can't hold it for this company, no. So then that is why we permitted people who wanted to issue shares for investment just for the sake of looking for dollars, okay, for financing their imports, were really required to facilitate this particular account. We call it a special foreign currency investee account. Earlier, all the companies had to receive their money, all investment, through the investors' IIA account to the rupee account of a local company. But where we permitted local company to retain these dollars, whatever they received for their investment in shares, in the form of dollars in the foreign currency account, we call it what? Special foreign currency investee account, only for meeting their current international transaction and also some other their permitted transaction. This is, of course, even a temporary facility. This was introduced in Tilini in 2022, but then we extended it by another year. Now we have extended it up to 31st, or company is still really eager to have this facility to keep their earning in dollars. They have an option of receiving their money for, for sales of their shares, share considerations. Consideration for sales of their shares in dollars to the credit of this account. That facility will be available only up to the end of this year. Okay. Yeah. So that's the one kind of a recent change, Mr. Bandula, we introduced. Okay. Right. So I'm not going to talk about the in detail things because of the in the interest of the time. Now, about the investigation, because Chambers want us to talk about the investigation and penalty part also. Just taking, listening to a 2-hour lecture is kind of a, I don't know how difficult that, I know I'm very, I know that I'm also not good at managing time, but still I'll try my level best to, just to give you the very essence and the substance of all these regulations and the acts and everything, just to make sure that you have utilized this time fruitfully. Otherwise you may not be able to listen to us quite often. So that is one of the things that you need to look into about the investigation. When you say investigation, I told you that we have to be a watchdog, like already liberalized transaction. You have to just keep on your eye whether the market is functioning as you expected. If the market is having a kind of malpractices and they are not following our regulation, this and that, that will not be very healthy developments happening in the market. So you'll have to keep on your eye in order to curb or in order to just to stop such illegal transaction happening or unauthorized transaction happening. In the event when we see that something happening against the provision of our law, against the regulation what we issued, against the orders or direction what we issued, what we can see that, okay, then we have some provisions in the act in order to take actions. So we can start an investigation in terms of the section 10 of the act. Of course, we can just go and inspect, we can just go to a place where we see a kind of something illegal transaction happening. If we see that it's really happening, even we can just make a statement of kind of that person culprit. And if we satisfy that there is a kind of a violation or non-compliance of our provisions of the act, then we can take further actions. Even not only the normal people, normal person, layman, even the banks also sometimes violate our regulations. Even the authorized dealers, money changers violate our provisions. What we have provisions in our act to take actions against them in terms of the section 11. In case of the authorized dealers, the banks and the money changers and other authorized persons, basically banks and authorized restricted dealers, broadly money changers, what we can do is whenever we come across such an event happening, it is not legal, they are not complying with our regulation, they are facilitating the customers, but they are not following our regulation. Okay. They are just trying to, just to get the shortcuts, but they are not just doing our regulation, because our regulation all focus on on managing our foreign exchange transaction orderly. Okay, but if they are not complying with this, then that would be something similar to they are violating or making non-compliances. In the event, what we can do is we can take action. Sometimes we issue notice in the first instance, or you have done this thing, okay, that you can't do this, something like that. In the event, if we continue to find this same violation repeating in a given period of time without making any remedial measures in order to correct what they had previously done, if happening, even we can temporarily suspend their permit. So you can see that if we temporarily suspend our ban, what could happen? Recently we suspended that actions were taken against some of the money changers. You would have heard in the press, you would have heard that some of the money changers license was temporarily cancelled, and thereafter we can start an inquiry. After an inquiry, we can permanently revoke their licenses. Even without going into a permanent revocation, sometimes we can temporarily put up a limit for their permit for 1 year or so if they have violated current or capital transactions. Okay, so that action is also there. If their violations is connected to the foreign exchange assets, then even we can put up a kind of a penalty on their alleged transaction up to the value of this particular transaction involved in this particular unauthorized payment or receipt. So that facility is also there. In respect of a non-authorized deal, I mean, like kind of a person is not a bank or a money changer, is a normal person engaging in some unauthorized foreign exchange transaction dealing. So they can't deal in foreign exchange. I told you, not being an authorized dealer, not being a bank, no person can deal in foreign exchange. What you can deal is that whenever you go to a money changer, you can sell your foreign exchange. That is a kind of a permitted one. Okay. But you can't buy it from a third party. Okay, if it is happening in any form, it's not permitted. In the event we come across such instances, that's something similar to violating the provision of the sections of our act. We can take action against such person by imposing penalties up to the value of that particular transaction. Okay, so those provisions are in that, but let me finally, before concluding my presentation, let me tell you a few these things in the future direction of our act. I just want to tell you that this act is really a young one, relatively new one. Okay, therefore, we have come across that some of the weaknesses in that. So that we thought that if we had some kind of strong powers, we would have been able to battle with this particular culprit more effectively. So that we have suggested some more amendments into the act that is on the pathway, so that hopeful that we will be able to bring some more reduction to the act, empowering the present sections of the act, because this act doesn't have a kind of a word called offense. in the absence of the offense, even the police can't take action on behalf of us. So you'll have to introduce a kind of a word called the offense into that. Even the FIU or other people also can take actions for having violated the foreign exchange transaction if the word is there in that like offense. So for basically we are going to suggest for illegal importation and exportation, illegal possession, and also illegal foreign exchange dealing to convert or accept as an offense. Then the other legislation will also be empowered in order to take the action under their respective legislation in the event if we introduce an offense into our act. Even the police can do so. Okay, so then we hope that the malpractices and other illegal transaction can be combated because with the introduction of more powers into that, something which is lacking in the moment. So I really appreciate your patience listening. And just for listening to a lecture like that for 2 hours, not easy, but you raise some questions and still feel free to ask questions. I really appreciate your patience listening. Thank you so much.
Take your questions.
Sure, sure.
We can take few questions. Just of time, we will not be able to take many questions because we are already behind time. So if you raise your hand, we will get you. Yeah. If you mind. Yes.
Does it apply to policy offshore companies? Company that are in policy.
You're asking the investment for the quality companies, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, so actually, the policy act is a separate act introduced by the government of Sri Lanka to facilitate the policy investment. So however, so as per the policy act, there is many power for the policy commission to regulate their investments within their framework. However, at the time of initiating the policy, the investment process for their investment, the policy commission requested us to grant some permission for foreign investor to move the investments into Sri Lanka criminally. So then after they will, with the issuance of their regulations, we will withdraw our regulations later. So, and in this case, we issued one of regulation for the policy investment. So that is that regulation was issued June 3rd of 2022. That is separate one from the regulation 2, right? Because this is a separate regulation issued only for the purpose of facilitate the policy investment. That is actually separate from the regulation 2. Regulation 2 is a normal situation where the investment are coming into Sri Lanka. The policy is a specific scenario. So in this regulation, we have accommodated for the investors who are willing to do the investment in Sri Lanka, procedure of bringing funds into Sri Lanka and credit of the policy authorized person. That means the permitted entity who is going to do the business in policy area. So only facilitating thing is fund routing, not the investment criteria, because that is under the policy act.
In fact, this facilitation is until they are operating. The interim regulation. So when they issue regulation and they will also put up their offshore bank, they are under their respecting that. So they will facilitate their investment. Yes, commission, but until issue regulation, we have facilitated. And at the same time, in terms of the policy act, of course, they have provisions in the act to exempt from certain laws also. In the event they exempt our law also, so our law will not be applicable for them, for their authorized businesses.
Can we just further elaborate, like, company, one company is collecting payments?
Yeah. So in such cases, we must. Otherwise, in this one consolidated.
I'm not sure that I understood.
There are two kinds of products. We have two aspects. From two aspects, but the whole kind of consolidation here. There are we have the one set of documents and one payment from the other side.
Then you have to set that when you collect the amount, you have to do that distribute that payment to the other person also. The recipient. Okay, so I have also come across some instances where the banks, this also they have requested from banks to transfer this money to these some of their suppliers who have also partly contributed to their consignment. And the banks have refused, and those have been referred to us for further consideration.
Yes.
But the only thing that I don't think that our department is in a position to grant special features because this rule was issued under the Monetary Law Act. If it is something that whatever your local supplies to this particular person, that of course particular local supplier is in a position to claim his payment in dollars, no issue. But it is something finished product that is going as a part of the consignment is a kind of a different scenario. Where, of course, we are not in position to permit because the rules are the immediate. It is our duty to see that the payments are coming to our country and then we are monitoring one. So it's a kind of a central bank policy, it's not only foreign exchange policy. That's it.
So if we are to maybe discount, suppose it is there, but if we discount, already can be there, then outside further, and completely small outside Sri Lanka. We have to really check all these social funds, all these investigation we have seen and later, I am discount.
Now, in fact, this IIT facility is basically given for normal, as a normal channel to make the investment. But in the case of these port city companies, we have given a kind of an alternative channel to bring the funds to the account called port city investment account.
We are going to build on the industry. Investor qualifies to the other port city. So we have to do the same intelligence check for the investor source that fund visa route that OG of the fund. We have to check those also.
You are that?
Yes.
Which bank? Which one? the industry account also they can open.
Yeah, industry, we have opened already,
Yeah.
industry is fine.
So,
As far as the investor is concerned, what we want to know is whether we have to do a detailed check on the beneficial ownership, the counterparty, the investor, the other parts are.
there is KYC, right?
Yeah, there's a KYC check from the investor. The source of funds, the beneficial ownership.
There is
Okay.
actually, someone that such requirements are coming under the FIU. So then I don't think they have given any exemption for the same. Because it is actually such requirement is not relevant to the Foreign Exchange Act. So the FIU regulations we have, cover all of our banking transaction, I guess.
So that's a part of due diligence.
Now, if they have a regulated investor industry, you don't have to do any deep dive into the areas.
But see that there is an organized person who is an investor, investing, and then we have been permitted to issue investment. And if we have a supporting document, then you can open those accounts for the industry. But yeah, at the same time, you have to carry out a due diligence for your investor. But in case of normal, you are due diligence for other investors like you are bringing identity fund also, you have to carry out this thing. Obviously, so that what I mean is that this FIU requirement will be equally applicable for such things also. If you have any doubt, please just go to our FIU division also, they will further clarify. Writing that it's a part of due diligence. Because the banks have been issued the due diligence direction by the FIU. So I don't think that they have given any exception for policy division. Yeah. Please contact them also.
Aside from monitoring of its focus is, the one commitment, say, supposing the resident has come on paper due. So we take the 1 month commitment as July or 31st of July.
It's up to 31st of June. It's a calendar month, you can go for another 30 days. That you make outside investment. Because that's presently we have suspended it, that can be financed by the borrowing. So that's what the correct, the order is that one exception is that you can't convert it into the loan, but still you can finance from a foreign loan. Then in the event the foreign loan has to come through the normal channel.
Normal channel, that is not the regulation too. So the law, the regulation from the borrowing is under the regulation too. So the your borrowing would be made in compliance with the regulation where you have companies have been permitted to borrow, subject to the 3-year tenor and open the ECBA and receive the borrowing ECBA. And then after you can proceed the investment by transferring the funds from the ECBA to OIA. But you have to give the proof of evidence to the banker at the time of prior to making the investment. You are going to finance these investment out of this loan. So the loan is subject to the regulation.
So now the person has to be brought back to Sri Lanka and then do the.
Anyway, you can bring the loan proceeds in Sri Lanka because unless you don't have funds left. So you have to bring the loan proceeds in Sri Lanka. That is a requirement under the regulation too. That's why I told you the applicable regulations in this regard, the law is under the regulation too. So you have to check with the both regulation 2, regulation 1 and the author. Right?
And other specific like the words that
Actually, Coordination Department. So I think there is a specific of request in our website also for that. So then accordingly you can apply the clearance letter. That is the only part in regard with regard to investment outside data. So under all funds will be done to the bank.
But you will be able to see some relaxation in this respect. Going forward, there will be some relaxation for allowing people to convert some amount of foreign exchange into dollar for making business. For the moment, completely not going to get suspended, but we are going to give some space for convert it into dollar out of their BFC funds. BFC funds also they can take some amount. For the moment, we can take only 20,000. We are going to just to give some more space for the BFC funds for investment and also to convert some amount of easy dollars for making business outside the country based on the recent development in the foreign exchange market. And going forward, we are under a targeted program, so that that we are as we highlighted in the morning that we have shown some improvement. So we are looking positively that in the future, based on the annual emissions, we will be able to just to grant more and more permissions in times to come. For the moment, we have these restricted, but going forward, we will be those things and.
Same, she mentioned the borrowing overseas. Can you borrow from anyone? Will be HNI overseas? Will be financial institution or anyone else?
Anyone.
Okay, we believe no more questions. You have, we can enter in only one question for the day.
Can we easily of restricted transaction here rupees? Relaxation. No, it's a relaxation like this. Yeah, it's a good question. And in fact, what we did recently, the Indian Reserve Bank of India issued their own circular allowing Indian currency to be converted outside India for trade transaction. It means that they have given the convertibility for Indian currency for international transaction. Earlier, it was not the case, no. Earlier, Indian currency, they did not envisage to be converted into to be used outside the country for international transaction. Now they have accepted as a policy that Indian currency is a globally convertible currency for trade transactions. Okay, that is their development took place in their policy front. So in line with this development, what we did was that we allowed the Indian currency to be used for international trade transactions. For that purpose, we had to identify Indian rupee as a designated currency, designated currency. So we have allowed another 15 currencies as designated currency to be used for international transactions. The Indian currencies were added, the last designated currency to the list. Just this thereby the list has included 16 designated currency. The last of the Indian currency. So now Indian currency is a designated currency. So whatever we have, the regulation we have issued, whatever the accounts that we have allowed the open with designated currencies, you can use the Indian currency as well. Supposing if you want to open an exporters foreign currency account in Indian rupee, you can do that because we have allowed those accounts to be open in designated currencies. Now the Indian currency is a designated currency. Okay, so the only thing is that the bank will also need to open their respective nostro accounts with the banks in India in order to facilitate these transactions. In addition to the agreement with the buyer and sellers to come into the transaction in Indian currency. In the event these buyers and sellers agree to enter into the Indian currency transaction, of course, the banks can facilitate it provided they have nostro balances.
But I don't think that the banks will build up their nostro balances unless they have some sufficient inflows of Indian currency into the country. So we have to ensure that there will be some sufficient inflows as well. So that is something going forward. I don't know how far the banks have gone in this direction, how far they have improved. But future, of course, the trade with India in Indian currency is possible, provided that the banks can facilitate this transaction. From the regulatory point of view, there's no issue. But still there will be some clarity. We need some clarity from the Reserve Bank of India with regard to this use of Indian currency for capital transactions. Like, someone is going to use this Indian currency for acquiring an asset, not as some kind of trade transaction. Trade means a current international transaction, but in the end, the Indian currency being used for international transactions like capital transaction, acquiring assets, let it be real or a financial asset, whether the Reserve Bank allows these people Indians to use the INR to enter into transaction in Indian currency. That, of course, has to clarify by the IRD, which they have not yet just done. But going forward, if they say that it's here, we have just developed from our point of view, our regulatory aspects are in place in order to finance, facilitate these capital transaction as well, but all depending on the view of the Reserve Bank.
But National Chamber is planning a detailed presentation on Indian currency transaction and trade. We actually are in the process of arranging it. Hopefully, it will come through quickly. So we will get the necessary parties involved and do a separate discussion like this on how the Indian currency could be used for trading.
Yeah, that is in terms of the rule. It's in terms of the rules. The local supply is supplying export for their export recycling. They can take the $10 by using their exporters for the currency now. It's the business for the currency now. For the currency now, that the banks will do. And before doing that, bank will take with their supplies as a kind of it's a component of their exports. So in that case, they will facilitate.
This is for currency.
This is for
The company is running in the foreign currency, can they pay their employees earnings in the foreign currency? Local employees.
local employees that you are a local employee.
Yeah,
You are export.
yeah.
So why they came in dollars? First of all, I want and your kitchen is very okay. Even I like to have very
Yeah, is it possible?
in terms of the loan office. Legal takes the country Sri Lanka to. So we don't encourage multiple currency practices within the country. That we ignore the domestic currency confidence. Then there will be no requirement of central bank.
But can we pay for trade and denominate dollars and pay for trade?
You know, really?
Dollars.
Why in rupees?
Yeah.
I'm paying in rupees.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have to conclude the session. We are almost at 12:30, and we would like to thank our resource persons from Central Bank, especially Mr. Sudat Prasanna, Additional Director, who made a very detailed presentation, and Mrs. Tilini Kaprugi, Senior Assistant Director, and Mrs. Madhu Jayaratna, Senior Assistant Director, who joined this session. And we would like to extend our thanks to Dr. Tilakavira, who graced this occasion. He had to leave us due to his busy schedule. And ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your participation. And we have organized 2 more sessions on the way, bilateral. We are more focused on bilateral discussions now to improve exports. Pakistan Ambassador High Commissioner is meeting us very soon on 12th, I suppose. And then on 20th, we have scheduled South African High Commissioner visiting us for a session like this. And you will see much more coming in. And we are working on Indian rupee transaction trade as well. One event, it will also come through, which will be announced. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please enjoy some refreshments that we have kept ready for you. And we believe the session was extremely useful. Thank you.